China's case is very special. I think China's case serves a very good case in order to understand global anti-Semitism and really contribute a different perspective to understand what is anti-Semitism.
That was Meng, assistant professor at Peking University, explaining how China is both the exception and the rule for understanding the nature and spread of anti-Semitic thought and discourse. What shape does anti-Semitism take in China, a country where Judaism is not formally recognized as a religion? What is it like to teach Jewish studies, Yiddish language, and anti-Semitism at a Chinese university? I'm Shana Hammerman, and this is Cite and Sound, the Stanford Jewish Studies podcast. Here we host conversations with scholars and artists as we explore Jewish scholarship, culture, and history. On today's episode, we welcome Meng, a Jewish studies scholar and the creator of the popular general education courses Jewish Civilization in a Global Context and Yiddish Language and Jewish Culture at Peking University. Meng visited Stanford to be in conversation with Stanford professor of anthropology Matthew Corman, who was unfortunately stranded on the East Coast due to the blizzard at the time of recording and unable to be there in person. We are so grateful that Matthew shared his questions with Toby Center for Jewish Studies faculty director Shemtov, who interviewed Meng in his stead. We send our gratitude to Matthew, Vered, Meng, and the various co-sponsors for this event, the Center for East Asian Studies, the Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity, and the Department of Anthropology. And now, the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Shemtov, for your invitation.
I wanted to start by asking you if you can share with us how did you get interested in Jewish studies and Yiddish?
Good question to start with. I started as a German major as I was a bachelor student. And I've been now teaching Jewish civilization and Yiddish in China. And people might ask the question, why is Shiksa, teaching Yiddish Jewish stuff in a land of Goyim and Shiksas? Well, I started as a German major. And then I did my PhD in Germany. And during my PhD, I was in Germany and as well as in Israel. And in Germany, as a Chinese student, almost every Chinese student in Germany will bump into three questions. The first question, where do you come from? China. Second question from German, what are you doing here? Studies. Third question, after studies, are you going to return to China or stay in Germany? Every Chinese student in Germany will bump into these three questions from local Germans. And how about Israel? I happen to learn Yiddish and have my Holocaust education program in Yad Vashem as I was a student. In Israel, on the street, as a Chinese, I also bump into three questions from local Israelis. First question, how old are you? Second question, are you married? Third question, oh, you're not married. How about come to Shabbos to meet my cousin? So these are the three questions that me as a Chinese bump into different Israelis on the streets. So during my PhD studies, I learned Yiddish and delved more and more into Jewish studies. And I thought, okay, that really interests me. And the Shabbos really a wonderful experience. So I changed from German studies to Jewish studies. So this is how I made my path.
Interesting. And so aside from a very few expats, the People's Republic of China has had few practicing Jews living there. And I understand that after COVID, there are even less than before. Yet you have been teaching now for several years a course on the history of Jews and anti-Semitism in China. And your course has more than 800 students, which is, I think, one of the biggest courses in the university. So I'm sure you are an amazing teacher, and that's part of the reason. But there must be something else going on there. Why do you think students are so interested in Jewish studies?
Thank you for the question. I started this course, Jewish Civilization course at Peking University during COVID in 2021. I started with 60 people, then 90 people, 258, then 400. Then after 7th October, I deliberately also increased the class, but I'm not sure whether there will be enough students coming because this is an elective course. And also to my surprise, immediately 800 students. So I have to separate into two different evenings, Monday evening and Tuesday evening. I started as small and I grew it. The students came to my class for different reasons. First, as a new teacher, I'm supposed to establish some new courses. And I found, hey, for the Jewish topics, no faculty members have ever launched a general education course. And just as your center provide general education course to the whole university, Stanford, like our general education course provide the elective courses to students across the disciplines. And in my class, especially after 7th October, I noticed a lot of STEM students came to my class, like math, physics, chemistry, computer science. And the composition of the class, like 80% Chinese Han students, the majority students, 10% Chinese minority students, including Muslim students, and another 10% exchange students. And some exchange students coming from different countries, also Malaysia. Even Malaysia students came to my class and tell me that that might be their only chance to ever encounter Jewish culture. And in general, Chinese Han students or Chinese minority students are very interested in global politics. And the general education course provide a very good platform for them, especially they're coming from science and major. So that provides them a very good chance to know about that. And as we know that in terms of geopolitics, Israel, Middle East is so important. And from the questionnaire that I have done with the students, most of the students are very interested in Holocaust. And after 7th October, they are very interested in the current issues. And that explained also the reason why they came to my class. Yeah, and I try to make the course not only focusing on ancient history, but also on current issue. Because in China now, there's a trend. A lot of teachers only offer courses on very ancient topics in order to stay on the safe side. And this course, we just addressed a lot of controversial issue, and that attracted young students to join. I guess that might be also part of the reason.
Interesting. Here in the US and elsewhere, there's a controversy around how to define anti-Semitism. How do you define it in the course? And is this also an issue in China? Is there this kind of distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism? Or if not, what are the questions that come up around the definition of anti-Semitism?
Mm-hmm. This is a very important question about definition, and defining what is anti-Semitism is also very important to combat anti-Semitism. And in my course, I will introduce three different definitions for anti-Semitism. I will use the definition of ADL, and also the definition of IRA, and also definition of 3D definition from Natan Sharansky. All the three definitions, when I introduce them to the Chinese students, I will tell them the pros and cons of each definition. Because in each definition, there's some controversy, especially in terms of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. So I would tell the students, these three definitions are probably now the most popular ones in the academic world. But even the most popular ones, we have a lot of controversial discussion about them. So they have to understand, if we are speaking about Jewish topic, it's a very complicated thing. Even among Jewish scholars, there's no single one answer to what is anti-Semitism. And in terms of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, when I'm introducing that, I will also tell the students, it's very hard to make that differentiation. The two terms have certain overlaps, but if you're criticizing Israeli government, as what I've seen during the past 2 years on the streets of Israel, almost every week, you see Israeli citizens come to the streets against Netanyahu. You cannot call that anti-Semitism. They are criticizing their own government. And a lot of Israelis and also Jewish people in the diaspora world also are doing the same thing. So there must be a line, but the line sometimes is very blurred. And a lot of people are using those blurred lines and quoted themselves within the code of anti-Zionism to attack Jewish people. And I will also tell students, you have to be alert about this kind of trend. because a lot of people will code themselves in anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism in order to be anti-Semitic on the safe side. So this is a dangerous trend. So I will also tell students. And in the past semester, I even make this as an exam question to the students. I will ask the students, do you think anti-Zionism is kind of anti-Semitism? Most of students said no, and they will list the different arguments. I think they are also encouraged to think that if it's only against Israeli government, we cannot call it anti-Semitism. And if it is to challenge the legitimization of the state of Israel, then that are already cross a line because according to the UN resolution, the state of Israel was established. So the students are supposed to think critically on that issue.
And where else do they hear about anti Semitism outside your class? Is this something that is around in the academic world? Is it something that's there on social media? I'm just thinking, comparing to what's going on here.
China's case is very special. I think China's case serves a very good case in order to understand global anti-Semitism and really contribute a different perspective to understand what is anti-Semitism. Because China is a country with very small Jewish population, and these Jewish population are usually non-Chinese. They're mostly foreigners. And China is a country without a Christian legacy. So China is a case to show that you don't need a Jew, you don't need a religion. Then you can also be anti-Semitic. And most of the anti-Semitic rhetorics you can see in China, usually in the social media, across different apps. Almost all the anti-Semitic tropes have been localized so that people can understand those tropes with local language. So we see there are people who are promoting all those tropes in the local language so that the Chinese can understand and get. And for example, we have in our audience also students and faculty members from China. We definitely know that one of our national trauma is about the Opium War. And in some social media, they will try to promote saying that in the Opium War, there are some merchants who have Jewish background. So Jewish people are responsible for the Opium War. So this is the localized anti-Semitic trope. And you will see a different conspiracy will be localized, like Harbin, a city in northern China. And there's a conspiracy saying that Jewish people wanted to establish their country in Harbin, which was totally not true. But a lot of people, without understanding the context, will believe that. And they are trying to promote that and mobilizing nationalism from local people against Jewish people. So this is a very dangerous trend in the social media.
So that is the nationalist trend only against Jewish people, or it's part of a nationalism trend towards the cultural others in general?
Mm-hmm. I would say now, if you see some anti-Semitic rhetoric from some intellectuals in China, you will notice they are meanwhile anti-Israel, anti-Jewish people, anti-America, anti-Western civilization, and meanwhile also anti-Japanese and anti the capitalism. So you see the trend is anti a lot of things, a lot of cultural others. So and meanwhile, as I also mentioned, that they are also anti-LGBTQ. So it's very different from the trend of the progressive movement. There's a deep core nationalism in those rhetorics.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how spread is anti-Semitism in China, and also give us some examples?
In social media, I guess audience here, especially Chinese audience here, if you open any Chinese app and if you type certain words that you already will find a lot of videos dealing with a lot of very problematic videos or comments. And you will also see a lot of wordplay in that. For example, the word squid, SQID, is now used as a euphemism to refer to Jewish people, because the Chinese translation of squid has a similar pronunciation of Jew in Chinese. So sometimes you see in the comments, people will write, kill the squid. and actually they may kill the Jews. And they know if they write "kill the squid," the censorship will not catch that. If they say write directly "kill the Jews," maybe they will have problems. So they will use the word "squid" to refer to Jewish people. And sometimes it can be very murderous comments in social media. And it's not only that. There's also another euphemism, the word "soap." Because there was an allegation in China that Nazi has once made Jewish people into soap during that time. So there, you will see also comments like this: "We should have made more soap." So they use those euphemisms in order to attack Jewish people and not get censored in the internet. So you will see that. And you have to really know the local language and know all those puns, all those cultural correlations in order to understand what those anti-Semites refer to in social media.
So that's in social media. And what about the university?
And in university, we found also an interesting trend because here in Western University, usually university professors are not influencers on social media. But in some Chinese universities, some Chinese university professors or scholars are very happy to be influencers. I guess some of our Chinese audience know whom I'm referring to. Because if you are influencer in social media, you can earn a lot of money. And some Chinese professors using the academic credit have account in social media, and some accounts have like millions of followers. So when they post something, they will get some money back. And when they post things against Israel, against Jewish people, usually they got a lot of feedback. So this is a way that they promote their fame and get financial gains. And it so happened that these professors, usually coming from international relations, also Middle East studies, and even Hebrew department. And because they are coming from these departments, so people will trust them more because thinking that they know. Because most of them have their education in America, PhD in America, in UK, and even Israel. They have all those education experience from the best universities where people also have the biggest Jewish communities. So people will trust them more. And when they promote something, and the general Chinese public will really follow them. And usually they are very tricky, and they would say that there are good Jews and bad Jews. Who are the good Jews? Ilan Papa, Finkelstein are the good Jews who are promoting ethnic cleansing of Israel. Who is a controversial figure here? And who are the bad Jews? Bad Jews are those Zionists. So even today in China, the word Zionism or Zionist are considered to be negative words in Chinese language. And before 7th October, that's a neutral term. And the translation of Zionism in Chinese used to be 犹太, just rebuild the country, which is totally a neutral term. But now after 7th October, after 2 years, the term has turned into be a negative term. And people, general public, actually have no idea. The concept of Zionism have different layers. You have culture Zionism, labor Zionism, political Zionism, post-Zionism. Local people have no idea. But when those university professors, they are big influencers on social media, and when they say that, and they make that distinguishment, and they did that very smart, because if they made that differentiation of good Jews and bad Jews, they can say they are not anti-Semitic. They are only, they can claim themselves only being critical of Israel.
So what make them anti-Semitic in your mind?
Because some of the students and I have been working on their comments. And when we analyze that, we will find, first, it's very different from the Western progressive movement because they are also against LGBTQ movement. And second, we found they are also promoting the kind of nationalism, but extreme nationalism and anti-American too. And their motivation is when they are promoting that, they will not only get fame, but also financial gains from the digital world. So for them, well, you used to say those who bless Israel will be blessed. But in China's case, sometimes it's those who curse Israel will be blessed. They got a lot of gains by doing that.
You mentioned October 7, and I wanted to hear a little bit more, if possible, how things changed after October 7. And first, right after October 7th, and then after October 7th and the war on Gaza.
Before October 7th, I already started a course. And usually I got very positive feedback from students. I got grades like 98, 97 out of 100 from students. And after 7th October, I decided, in spite of all the challenges, I enlarged the course because this is for me also teaching experience, though I know there are a lot of challenges waiting for me. The students, you will see a lot of negative comments already. When I speak about Israeli hostage, immediately people will ask, why are you not speaking about more about Gaza? And I even also made some questionnaire among the students by asking questions like, do you think Hamas as a terrorist organization? And at the very beginning of the course, like 40% of the course attendants say, no, they don't think Hamas as terrorist organization. Chinese government also never claimed Hamas as terrorist organization. And at the very end of the course, I made another survey. Less than 10% will say Hamas is not a terrorist organization. And because in the Chinese environment, our access to information is quite different from here. I screened the documentary film October the 8th in all my classes. I happen to had like 4 classes in the past semester.
Maybe say something about it in case some people don't know what it is.
Okay. October 8th is a documentary film, and it is on what happened on October 8th, right immediately after October the 7th massacre event on U.S. campus, mostly, because on October 8th, already a lot of U.S. campus students demonstrated and already against Israel before Israel reacted to October the 7th. And in the documentary film, October the 8th, I think the screening experience was very shocking to most of the Chinese students because they wrote me also the feedbacks. I asked the students, is it your first time to know about the sexual violence of Hamas on October the 7th by by viewing that film? To my surprise, more than 2/3 of the students said it's their first time because they never heard that. They never heard that in any of the report or social media. So this is to say that in the case of China, for students, if they have limited access to some information, it's very hard for them to make judgment. By screening those documentary films, they have some access to some information.
I want to go back to the anti-Semitism. And how is if you can say something about the new anti-Semitism versus is there a history of anti-Semitism in China? Are there tropes that are being, taken from anti-Semitism in other places, or its own kind of culture of speaking about it?
Yeah, it's very important. I published an article about anti-Semitism in China in The Diplomat several months ago. It's open access, and I called this wave is anti-Semitism 3.0. Because usually we think the previous form of anti-Semitism worldwide usually have a lot to do with religion. That is anti-Semitism 1.0. And then racism, Nazi, anti-Semitism 2.0. But in the case of China, we had no religious legacy, and we had very few Jewish population, and we don't even have a very strong sense of otherness because Chinese society is actually very, it's quite. We have a very big majority Han, yeah. So this new wave is more geopolitical and more narrative driven. And if we see this wave, usually you see it in social media, as we just mentioned. And we also see it was led by a lot of intellectuals, and usually nationalist intellectuals and online opinion leaders. They were the leading force of all those tropes. And those a lot of tropes have already been localized, as I already mentioned, even blood libel, which I used to think it could be impossible in the Chinese context, but we also saw some blood libel came into different forms, in the form of cartoon and in some form of Chinese in the diaspora world. They promote that. And the conspiracy was very popular, especially Jews control the world, control media, and they control finance. And that was mostly that appeared that in social media. And we also saw that because in China we use a lot of WeChat, and there were some newly opened WeChat account in the past 2 years. And some accounts, they have been translating some very controversial intellectual articles from different languages into Chinese. And the translations were very, very professional Chinese. And controversial scholars like Ilan Papa, Shlomo Sant have been translated into Chinese also years ahead of October the 7th. And after October 7th, more translations about Ilan Papa appeared in Chinese language. It is okay that we know we read from different scholars. But if you put Ilan Papa as a central part, or Ilan Papa seeming to be the symbol of Jewish scholar in China, then that would be very biased. And for Chinese public, it's very hard for them to judge. He is a controversial figure, or he is a kind of the figure that we should trust. So this is very hard for the local people to make the judgment. I think several months ago, there's also different snacks already put into a Chinese market. And the snacks is about shredded squid. And again, squid is a euphemism for Jews. And the brand for the shredded squid is Xihai, which is, again, a wordplay of Zikai. I guess some of my audience know, because in the Nazi time, Sieg Heil is considered to be the greetings form to Heil Hitler. So you see a lot of highly educated people were involved in those things, and they tried to promote things. And when Bondi Beach attack happened, overwhelmingly in Chinese social media, a lot of likes. I even made that as a question in the examination to ask the students in my class to consider and to ask themselves why Bondi Beach happened. There were so many likes in Chinese social media. And the students also give me a lot of answers and their thinkings on that, because they understand the social media environment was not good.
So how would it be to visit China as a Jew or as an Israeli? First of all, do you think there is a difference? Would you be treated differently, or is it safe? Would it be welcoming? I think this, it might seem to some people as a question that is strange, but this is something that is on the mind of a lot of Israelis now as they travel.
First, welcome to China. And second, I would say what I have described, because you can see that what happened in social media, like social media in everywhere else, you see a lot of voices. They are very loud, but they can only represent a certain number of people. Okay. There are also a large number of people who are silent, who are not agree with them, but they just don't say anything, and they're silent. And I know that the 800 students, maybe among them 10% are very against Israel or have problem with the current conflict. But the other 90%, 80% of the students, they kind of neutral, or they kind of understand this is a complicated issue. And we cannot just simply say we are on this side or that side. They see it as a complicated issue. On the internet, the majority are silent. And I would say I have confidence also in my people. The majority of the Chinese are friendly to travelers from all over the world. And China has maybe the most strict law of guns, and everywhere is camera. And to be sure that most Chinese cannot tell who are Jewish or who are not, just like you cannot tell who are Chinese, Japanese, Korean. So for international traveler, totally safe. And usually in Chinese social media, you wouldn't see people would differentiate Israel, Jewish people, and Israelis. They don't differentiate these terms. I guess it's for non-Jewish people, usually they don't have a very clear line of that.
I wanted to ask you something that we ask all of our guests in the podcast. Is there a text from the Jewish tradition that speaks to you at this very moment and that you would like to cite?
Well, in the past
Refer
2
to.
years, I've visited Israel on my own cost, and I see almost everywhere they have the word akshav.
Shav means now.
Now, akshav means now. So that reminds me of the sentence from the quotes from Hillel. Im en ani li mili. Yeah, if I'm not for me, who will for me? Ani le'atzmi mani. If I'm only for me, who am I? Ve'im lo akshav ematai. And if not now, when? Yeah. So akshav is the word that I saw all the time, like in the past 2 years, especially facing this hostage crisis in Israel. And now we are facing the problem of global anti-Semitism. And I guess the problem now is just beginning, and we don't know when it will end. But you have to, do something. And akshav might be the answer, because I know Israelis, Jewish people usually think Yehiya Beseda, but this
Everything's
problem
going to be okay.
is not going to Yehiya Beseda. You have to do something. Education might not be the only solution, but you have to figure out more, because we see Holocaust education is kind of failure in facing of preventing anti-Semitism, and we really should, do something now.
And if not now,
Yeah.
when? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Professor. Yeah, thank you for the audience.
Today's episode was produced by me, Shayna Hammerman, with help from Eva Clem. Sound editing and design by Romy Kiorian. Original music is by Jeremiah Lockwood. Cite and Sound is a production of the Toby Center for Jewish Studies at Stanford.
Stanford University.